talk about.
It's St. Louis.
Welcome to the A-Train Show. And now here's your host, the A-Train, Arlington Lane.
Yeah, true chatter. Yeah, I think it's time for more true chatter. Born every day 100 new fake rappers. We got too many powers, too many actors. But us brothers only good for entertainment. Lack of. Yeah.
Welcome to this edition of the A-Train Show, the A-Train Arlington Lane. It is the New Year's Train Part 1. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of the show today. Excuse me. I want to thank all of our friends over at Just Meet Jerky, Macdougall, Banton, Philip Johnson, Salon, and Spa. And as we do every single week on the show, we want to thank all of our fans that tune in to the program. So we do appreciate you. Appreciate you very much, a lot. So thank you for tuning in to this edition of the show today. All right, it's New Year's Eve, so I'm definitely going to I was going to keep it short today, but there's a lot going on, and we got a lot to discuss before we get out of here in 2024. And yeah, we got so much today, and then we got so much coming in for next year. We're definitely going to have to talk about some of the things to remember in 2024. Thinking of Dr. Robert Bailey Jr. in his absence. Definitely Happy New Year to you, brother, if you are tuning in to the show today. But yeah, he wish he could be here. He really could. And he, got some duties that he has to take care of. And so that's why he's out for this show today. And who knows, we'll see him in the new year for sure. So one of the things that I wanted to discuss on the show today, and golly, the NFL season has been crazy, especially going into these final weeks especially going into the final week. I'm like, good googly moogly, it's gone crazy, and I'm like, boy. And yeah, let me make sure I get all my people out there so they can tune in to the show on my personal page. Hey, folks, if you're checking out the show today, make sure you're checking it out on boomfuelsportsnetwork.com. You can go to X at Fuel Sports Net, and you can also catch it on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Fuel Sports Network 25. All right. So, and if you have a question or you want to chime in via email, there's our email there, admin@fuelsportsnetwork.com. All right. Especially the stuff that's going on with football and wrestling and basketball and baseball. It definitely was a great year for sports again. We were in the year of Shohei Ohtani from 2024 with his magical season. And of course, the Dodgers winning the World Series. Of course, the Boston Celtics got back on top again with their NBA Finals win over the Dallas Mavericks. Beginning of the year, Kansas City winning the Super Bowl once again. And they're vying for a third straight Super Bowl as we're getting closer to the end of the season. And if I remember correctly, Florida. That's right. Florida Panthers won their Stanley Cup this year, and all every champion in all sports, congratulations to all you guys as well. Yeah, happy New Year to you too, Jim Harris. Thank you so much, man, and hopefully we get some more comments and stuff coming into the show today, because I definitely want to hear from you guys, and what your big sports moments were of 2024. Whether it was local, whether it was national, regional, I want to hear from it all. So I know one big sports moment for me in 2024 was, of course, we also lost a lot of people in 2024, big names at that. You say you won fantasy football this year. I'm in the championship right now as we speak. And right now I'm currently leading. I'm going into the final week. And there's a little bit of cash that's on the line for this particular league. And I hope the commissioner is watching, because what wound up happening was I end up participating I'm going against a computer now. So I think that should solidify me winning the championship already. And even if the computer were to win, the person that was behind it, they quit. So if they watch it, I think I should just go ahead over and send me the cash. It was great. Go ahead, send the cash over, and we'll leave it at that. I did mention congratulations. Got him a nice little grip. Maybe I could do the same. Let's see what happens. What good times and good looks are coming for me today. But yeah, 2024 we've been dealt hands of great loss as well. Many have dealing with victories. We dealt with great loss. Just lost a broadcasting legend, Greg Gumbel, this past week. And one thing that I can say about Greg Gumbel was a pro's pro. And anytime you watched him, that was like, he had a shtick, and the shtick was he had March Madness. March Madness was Greg Gumbel, one of the more primary voices of March Madness. And, thank you so much, Jim, and I appreciate that so much. And it should be a big year coming for the A-Train show, and also Fuel Sports Network. We've dealt with many gains, and then we've dealt with many losses, and that's part of when you're doing is building up something like what's special here at Fuel Sports Network. I'm grateful for those that were here and those that are no longer with us anymore. I'm grateful for them still, and so that's always a plus, because you got to deal with that and the minuses, and is what you do from that in the future is what is going to help propel where Fuel Sports Network goes into the future. So I'm grateful for everybody, for sure. And I thank you for that, Jim, and I thank you for that message. But I'm sitting back here and, dealing with this, losing like Greg Gumbel. We lost Ricky Henderson. We lost Pete Rose, Fernando Valenzuela. Those are pretty big. Willie Mays. We took some big losses. And we lost Kenny Holzman, Bill Walton, O.J. Simpson, Jerry West. So it's like big notable names here that are no longer with us. And it's just, just mind-boggling. We lost a lot of people. Like it's bananas. And I'm gonna bring in a major contributor here at Fuel Sports Network, and I'm glad that he's able to chime in. I probably got a message from one of our colleagues say, "Hey, hop on with us," and I'm grateful that he's doing so. And I always love having him when we do the show. It's the one and only from the Derek King Show. Derek King, what's going on, brother?
Well, it's cold and it's
is
windy. We're getting to the back end of NFL season.
Yeah, exactly.
Baseball is in winter purgatory per usual.
Yeah.
Hockey season is kind of, it's in that kind of lull.
Just dragging along.
It's dragging along. NBA is
dragging along.
doing NBA things. It's funny to me that in the world of sports, that we've dealt with for, so many years, that I remember my entire life in the wintertime revolved around the NFL schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I did, going to games, watching them on TV, participating in events that were around football stuff, everything was so involved with that. And when St. Louis lost its football team, I had already moved away from the market at that point, but I was still watching games. I was still rooting for the team in St. Louis. And when they left, it just, big gaping hole. Now it's like, now what do I do now? Like, who do I root for? What do I do? And it's almost kind of an identity crisis that some of us have. At some given points, I've talked to a lot of fans over the years that they're like, oh, well, I've never had a football team, so I just root for whoever I like. It's a very odd concept for me, especially in the wintertime. That being said, when we start talking football, and I know there's a lot of folks out there that do the fantasy football leagues. Hopefully you're doing well. I had to take this year off. Why did I have to take this year off of fantasy football? Well, strictly due to the fact that I kind of suck at it. And I was tired of throwing money at the wall when it came to fantasy football. I'm really, really good at being able to kind of, pinpoint a team typically and say, hey, I think this team's going to do really well this year. I think, this player is going to end up getting, 1,500 yards rushing or 1,300 yards rushing. They're probably going to be, on average 3.8 to 4.2 yards per average carry, as far as a running back is concerned. I'll look at a quarterback and say he has no real viable threats. He has no one that is there for him to throw to. I look at Baker Mayfield this year, and I look at what he's managed to do the last 2 years in Tampa Bay and managed to turn his career around. Whenever just 3 years ago, or it's three or four, I think it's 3 or 4, that he was in Carolina with Sam Darnold. And look at what Sam Darnold's doing now. So I digress. That's where my mindset is right now.
And as you speak of that, we talk about the MVP conversation now. Is it time to put Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield in that? And then remember, I don't know if you mentioned it, but they were both Carolina Panthers at one point in their career.
Yeah,
and
I did.
Both of them, and the both of them now have moved away from that situation, and now they're putting themselves in a place where both of them are going to it's looking like they're going to see a playoff appearance. Depends on what Tampa does in week 18 in this final week. If they win, they're in pretty much. So I
appreciate everything that both those individuals have done for their teams. Obviously in Minnesota with Sam Darnold, what he managed to do when he was not the guy. He was just supposed to be the backup for JJ. When McCarthy went down, he managed to just carry the rock, so to speak. With Mayfield in Tampa, I think that they were just looking at a situation where they needed more of a Trent Dilfer-like kind of guy to just be a game manager. Don't throw the ball away. Don't fumble the ball away. Don't try to, make huge plays. And I think they got more of that. There were some comparisons to Drew Brees in like 2011. Let's be real. Drew Brees was a freak. Drew Brees is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Drew Brees that year threw for almost 5,500 yards and damn near 50 touchdowns, I think, that year. I mean, just absolutely insane. Frankly, real talk, Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels is the MVP of the league, as far as I'm concerned.
You know what?
Because he took a loser organization, a loser franchise, in what we remember as the Washington Redskins, now the Washington Commanders, a horrid, wretched franchise from top to bottom. And in his rookie year, this is a kid. He's a kid. He has gotten them into the playoffs.
Let's not discredit. Okay. I'm gonna throw this name out
I'm
there.
just saying. I'm
gonna throw this name out here, and I want people to understand why I'm throwing this name out. CJ Stroud. Now, CJ Stroud this year was not the CJ Stroud of last year. Right? CJ Stroud last year was in those conversations of sorts. Granted, he was the offensive rookie of the year. I get what Jaden Daniels has done this season. He's magnified what CJ Stroud did last year. But let's understand this. CJ, granted, you could say he played in a weak division. Okay, cool. Yes, thank God for Jaden Daniels. Me personally too, because I had to deal with him and Joe Burrow all year long, and Joe Burrow would not do well, and Jaden would, but I had him benched. Then I did the reversal, and this time Jaden did well, but he didn't do better than Joe. So it's been a weird situation for me with that. But CJ Stroud, granted that this year has not been the best, but check this out: 2 division titles. So he's going to the playoffs for a second year. Granted that this second year has been way different than it was the first time. And he was there. My thing was with him, the media and fans have already crapped on him because he set the bar so freaking high his first year. And that's what I'm hoping Jaden Daniels understands. And when he gets his second year, that you're going to set the bar so high, you're going to have little room for margin of error. That means you're going to have to be perfect in your second year, or not, they're going to destroy you. Try to destroy you, that is. Because CJ had no room for error. Like, he couldn't have a sophomore slump at all. And because he couldn't have a sophomore slump, they have pounded on him, saying that you should be better than you were the year before. It's like, sophomore slumps happen. But again, that margin for error was so low that he couldn't make one. He couldn't make mistakes. If he made mistakes, he's a bust. And it just drove me crazy. And I'm hoping for Jaden Daniels, and that he's going to be in this conversation for sure for MVP. And the list is continuously growing as we get into the final week of the season.
Well, just to kind of touch on CJ for a second, I've got obviously his Pro Football Reference analytics pulled up for this season and last season. Again, 2-year quarterback, relatively young, at 23 years old. I mean, kid. Is he having the kind of year that he had year before? No, he's thrown double more interceptions this year than he had last year. He's throwing less yards per game this year than he did last year. His rating is lower than it was this year than it is that year, but his record is relatively the same. So we could sit here and we could split hairs over those particular statistics, those small numbers, or you could look at bigger picture and you could look at them game by game. We all know that their schedule got harder. It didn't get easier. It got more difficult. So now you're playing a lot harder games in a lot more difficult situations. So you got to give CJ Stroud, and they always talk about what, Arlington, in the second year of a quarterback's, career, they always talk about that sophomore slump. And is he having the slump? A little bit. He's come back down to planet Earth. But I mean, the reality of what he's managed to do in the time frame that he's managed to do it in, hats off to CJ Stroud. He's done a fantastic job for what has been given to him. And we also have to remember, again, put in a bad situation with a bad franchise, with a bad head coach, with a bad, the whole situation was bad. They had to turn that whole organization over with the Houston Texans.
Exactly. And that's where, when we look at it, I'm like, I get it. And a lot of people are asking for D'Amico Ryans to be fired. And I'm like, anytime you can get a coach that can take your team to the playoffs in back-to-back seasons of his first 2 years as a head coach, I don't think you want to let him go. I think you do see a bright future with it. Granted, there has been some movement there's probably going to be some type of new movement, or there's something that's got to be different or creative for this team to get past where they're going to be. Now, we don't know what second year that means for them right now, because all we know at this point is they've made the playoffs. All right. We don't know what the ceiling is going to be for them, whether they ended in the wild card round or they get past and go further. We will not know that just yet. But I'm like, folks in Houston, you guys need to chill out. Like, this team is where you want it to be. And they have already superseded everything, just like Washington has. This year for Washington, they have superseded everything. And because of that, the sky is bright, and the future is bright for those organizations. These are teams that you did not see have a lot of success are now starting to have that. And that's what's good for the league at this point. And so, yeah,
well,
that's how.
Another thing I do want to touch on too, that I didn't realize, that Jaden Daniels is actually older than CJ Stroud by a year. So CJ Stroud is younger with another additional year of experience than Jaden Daniels is. Now, can we sit there and go, oh, well, that's a huge difference? A year to that's debatable. I don't see that. My theory typically is, how well do you come into a situation? Again, novice, everyday people that are just fans of the product. They like to watch it on Sundays or Monday nights or whatever, and they're just fan of the product, right? They don't understand a game at a fundamental level like people that have played it. Okay, that understand how plays are called, how the games are structured, how everything goes. The amount of knowledge that these players have to have of how schemes are ran, in what situations, in what scenarios, how much time is on the clock, what kind of defense are they running against us? If you're on the offensive side, if you're on the defensive side, what kind of offense are they running? Are they in the 2-minute warning portion? Are they behind? Are they ahead? What's the situation? What's the scenario? There's so many variables. And for a young man to come into this situation with that much weight, the unbearable weight of success that has been placed upon you. Look at Caleb Williams and his situation in Chicago. The unbearable weight of a wretched franchise that cannot get the quarterback situation right. Why? How are they any different than any other NFL franchise that has ever existed in the history of football? Let's look at the New York Jets, for example, and their situation right now with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, you would think Aaron Rodgers has had some amazing success in his career. Super bright guy, knows how to play the game. But yet, they can't seem to get it right. You go back in time. You look at some of the quarterbacks of history past with the New York Jets. I'm going to skip some because there's just, that's what I'm going to do. But you go back in time and you see Mr. Butt Fumble, Mark Sanchez. You see Chad Pennington, who was one of their better quarterbacks that they had for a few years. You go back, and I remember prior Vinny Testaverde, right? Prior Vinny Testaverde in New York with the Jets, they had a guy called Neil O'Donnell. Remember him? The Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback that took the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Super Bowl. lost, but still took the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Super Bowl. Okay. Go back further than that with the Jets. Who else did they have? Well, they had Boomer Esiason for a hot minute.
Yeah.
With all his success that he had in Cincinnati. Okay. Then you keep going back and you keep seeing, okay, well, they had Ken O'Brien. Okay, Ken O'Brien is a great quarterback. He's really, really good quarterback. But that was in the 80s. And then you had this, just like you had these huge gaps of really bad quarterbacks. Look at the Chicago Bears. Even go to Jim McMahon. Okay?
Yeah.
Name me one great quarterback. Go.
In Chicago?
Yeah. Name me one. I'll do you one solid. Name me one solid starting quarterback. Go. Out of Chicago for the Bears.
I can't. I really can't. Bobby Douglas, and that's in the 70s. I can't.
Jim McMahon, who was the only quarterback during this long span of time in 85. We all remember the 85 Bears, who ran rush shot over the entire NFL with their defense, with the Buddy Ryan defense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why is it that some teams manage to get amazing quarterback after amazing quarterback like the Green Bay Packers? Why is it that the Green Bay Packers can have some of the most talented quarterbacks to ever come through their system? Let's remember back in 1990, let me think here. Was it 1997? 1996, somewhere around in there. They had 4 quarterbacks on roster at the time. And again, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but they had Brett Favre. Kurt Warner was on that list. I believe Mark Brunell was there at the time. I also believe that Ty Detmer might have been there at the time. I might be mistaken, but you had 4 pretty darn good quarterbacks at that point in time in Green Bay. That's just the way that it is. So
no doubt about it.
So, I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, let's look at some of the other franchises in the NFL and where they've had a lot of success. I don't care what anybody says. You got to have a running game. If you don't have a running game, you don't have a ground game, you're not going to win. You could sling the ball up and down the field all you want, but if you don't have some kind of threat coming out of the backfield, whether that's your quarterback or whether that's a running back, I don't care if it's Patrick Mahomes. I don't care if it's Randall Cunningham. I don't care if it's Mike Vick. It don't matter. Because at the end of the day, you got to have a ground game on the offensive side. You can run all the slants and posts and, I mean, we can go through every single pattern that you can run and every different set that you can run on offense. If you don't have a running game, you can't do it. That's just the way it is.
Exactly. And that's how it was going to be with that Green Bay organization, man. Like even you can go back with Bart Starr, you can say with Lynn Dickey, you can go back to those guys, and it's just like Andrew said.
Well, and I'll give you another couple of good examples of teams that have had great success at court. Let's just stick to quarterback, for example. And if you just stick to quarterback, you could look at Washington. Washington's had a lot of really good quarterbacks. Have they had some standard quarterbacks like Mark Rippon, who's won them a Super Bowl? Absolutely. But Washington's had some great quarterbacks. Doug Williams comes to mind. Probably one of the most talented quarterbacks that was just grossly overlooked during the 80s and the 70s. The fact of the matter is that, the Washington organization has had lots of really good quarterbacks. The Philadelphia Eagles, again, lots of amazing, great quarterbacks that they've had within that quarterback room. And I understand that there's a lot of individuals that will look at it and say, well, it's a coaching philosophy, because you look at Philadelphia for years and years and years. They had Andy Reid in there. Well, look where Andy Reid's now. Look at what he's doing now. But where did Andy Reid come from? Andy Reid came from the Mike Holmgren tree. Mike Holmgren was in Green Bay. And so you look at that Holmgren tree, and everybody who came off of that Holmgren tree over years and years and years were quarterback whisperers. They were the guys that could manage to do something. I'll give you a great analogy. Are you ready? Because I'm going to give you the best analogy you're going to hear all damn day long when it comes to this. I look at the St. Louis baseball Cardinals, and I look at Tony La Russa and Dave Duncan. Dave Duncan got things out of pitchers that nobody else could. Why? Dave Duncan was a catcher. He understood the mental incapacities that a lot of pitchers have. He could be their personal psychiatric analyst, and he could figure out what's going on. What is Yadier Molina? What did Yadier Molina do for the Cardinals organization for years? We could have this conversation about batting averages and home runs and statistics and all this other crap. Nobody ran on him. For 15 plus years, nobody ran on Yadier Molina. They just didn't do it. People will sit there and say, oh, well, no, it's just a day and age of baseball. The way it was. No, he was just really, really good at what he did. And he knew how to play with his pitchers. He knew how to manage them. That's the most important part of this entire conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I look at a lot of different things when it comes to this football season. And I would say keep your eyes peeled on the Washington. What are they going to be? The Commanders? Are they still going to be the Commanders? I don't know. There's rumors that they're talking about going back to the Redskins. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. But they're working on some things. I know they talked about prior to this season that they were going to change the name for that organization. Are we still going to see the Chiefs make another big, deep run into the playoffs? I don't know.
Like, who's the MVP and of this season right now? You mentioned about that, and Lamar Jackson.
I still got to say Daniels because of what he's managed to do in Washington.
And a lot of people are. Here's the thing: I can't dismiss what Lamar has done. Lamar is at a place where it's could be very historical come this final week of the year. All he has to do is throw a touchdown, no picks, and if he does so, and you can see if you can back me up on it, he'll be the only quarterback in history to have a 10 touchdown to 1 interception ratio in a season. Average.
I think you're correct on that. I don't know if there was any other quarterback. To the best of my knowledge, I would have to go back and check Pro Football Reference, frankly, to see if that's even something that's been done. I know there's been like 8-1, 6-1 for sure, but I don't know. I don't know if it's been 10-1.
Rodgers 3 years ago. 3 years ago, he was at 48 touchdowns, 5 picks, which is 9.6 to 1, 9.6 to 1, which is close, but it's not 10-1.
But we're still not at the end of the season yet. I mean, he could throw 4 or 5 interceptions in the last game, but is that likely?
True.
No, it's not likely, but it's a
He's
possibility.
Very smart this year.
Right. And so, I mean, Lamar, here's the thing with Lamar, right? I look at Lamar like he's almost superseded the MVP award to me. Lamar is that good to where I expect him to perform at that level all the time. I expect him to be performing.
Low margin of error. See,
right.
You mentioned
now, if he throws down next year, guess what? If he throws 38, 42 touchdowns and has 15 interceptions next year, throws for 4,200 yards and rushes for 1,700 or whatever, 1,500, 1,200 yards, I'm going to look at Lamar and I'm going to go, bro, you stunk up the joint. You stunk up. Now, any other quarterback, that would have been amazing. That would have been absolutely fantastic. sad that it happened for any other quarterback in the league. Could you imagine Sam Darnold putting up those kind of numbers? Putting up 38 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, 4,200 yards, and 1,200 yards of rushing, or 800 yards of rushing? Could you imagine that? But when we look at Lamar, we're like, it's
low margin of error. That's
right.
why
Because the expectation is set so high. The bar has been superseded by him to such an extent that he's so good. It's the same thing. Here's the other thing, too. I wanted to bring it up. Patrick Mahomes. Because that reminds me, the Lamar situation, what we're just talking about, and having this low margin of error, right? This very high bar. Why doesn't that exist for Patrick Mahomes? Why is it that Patrick Mahomes gets a pass? Why is that? I don't see anybody on ESPN, Fox Sports, CBS, NBC, any other talking head program, same as here. I don't see anybody digging on Mahomes because he's having one of the worst statistical years of his career.
But it's always leading to the end of he gets the job done when it matters.
He still wins, right? He still wins.
He still wins.
He gets the job done because what they're going to say, and there's some truth to this. So I want to make it very clear. I'm not dogging. All right. Game respects game. I get it. Because he's a team player. That's the argument that will be made. He don't need the accolades anymore. He doesn't need it. He's won multiple Super Bowls. He is, as far as I'm concerned right now at this point, he's considered the GOAT of the league. Because now that Tom Brady's gone, Patrick Mahomes has looked at it like he's that guy.
Exactly. And I mean, come on. And that's why he continuously gets the passes and stuff. All right, I'm gonna move away from football because we can go on this all.
Oh yeah.
I want to say right now, probably the best who had the biggest and best 2024 in my opinion is WWE. I don't think people really realize how big a year they had.
Huge,
and especially where they're headed going into 2025 is going to be even crazier. That you have Mr. McMahon leaving. You have the documentary that came out. You get the Netflix deal. You had probably one of the biggest WrestleManias on record. Royal Rumble was even great. Money in the Bank is pretty good. SummerSlam as an event was good. Survivor Series War Games was pretty good. And it was prolific. And so you as the viewer, and then you got the Netflix deal that just is about to start literally on next Monday. And NXT's product has gone through the roof, and their main shows have gone through the roof, and the content level has gone beyond far of Vince McMahon's expectations, if he even has any, if they even value what he even says at this point.
The production level, as far as I'm concerned, has changed drastically and gotten better since Vince McMahon's departure.
Yeah. And if you look at it, and the reason why people are still entertained with it, whether you like it or not, whether you still are a critic or whether you are a big fan, is because of how things have changed. And we expected at some point it would never do so, because we all thought that Vince McMahon would remain with this organization until he was in a box. And even when he got in the box, he would have figured out that he still had some type of leeway to make something happen. But he can't. And because of that, that changed. Even last night, when on the last linear cable television edition of Monday Night Raw, you saw what happened between Seth Rollins and CM Punk, and how they were both going back and forth at each other, especially CM Punk when he was talking about how he left the company. And it was because of the leadership. And now that the leadership has changed and it's altered the course, it has now gone on, it's transcended. Like even the content, I mentioned about the content. You're now starting to see the story being featured on social media. And when I say that couldn't have been more epic, because you don't know whether they're being real or not. You can't tell.
There was times in that promo. And that promo, I remember one specific incident during that promo. And obviously, I don't want to give the whole can away for those who haven't seen it. If you have not seen it, go to YouTube, pull it up. USA Network has it. WWE has it up. But one thing specific, that has been pushed in that conversation, that storyline between Rollins and Punk, has been Rollins' disgust with CM Punk of being a part-timer, of being that guy that only comes and goes when he feels it, when he wants it, that he took his ball and he went home. And that Punk then turns around and says, I don't see Becky here. Did she take her ball and go home? I loved that little subtle dig. I loved that aspect of bringing in a little bit of touch of reality there and being able to get people to see it and understand it and go, oh, now we're starting to get a little real here. Okay. And then you could see kind of the switch flip with Rollins. And then he comes back and he says, oh, hey, yo, that's a zing right on past you there. Crazy. But that was a really, really great promo because the pros, the really good ones, they never let you see it.
No,
you don't know.
They never do.
You don't know what's real.
Not at all. At all. And that's why the product has superseded what it's done in the past. And granted that this Raw on Netflix thing, I'm very curious to see what it looks like going into 2025.
I got you. Yeah, no, the reality is that I'm going to be more interested in what's going to end up happening with the streaming issues that we've seen up to this point.
And you know something? After what was witnessed with the NFL on Netflix, I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think internationally, that'll still be fine too. And the reason why I say that is because I don't expect Raw to get anywhere near the NFL's audience, but I expect them to have enough where it won't be a streaming issue unless you in bad venues where there's a streaming problem. I think that's the only thing. But each venue that they have been in, they haven't had an issue technical wise. I know they still have to keep that in mind when you're doing this type of stuff, and you're removing yourself from cable television now. You're on a total stream.
Well, and the thing is that is the plan always to be shooting in these arenas, to be going live on Netflix from these locales on site? Is that always the plan? Or are they going to start doing it in studio a lot now, like they used to in the past? Because, okay, what we're doing right now, you can have a controlled environment. You could have a stable internet connection. You could have all of those things. When you're in that world, when you're in that environment and you're traveling from city to city and going state to state and you're going all over the place, that's a lot more difficult to get a solid internet connection that's stable to cover that kind of a load. The bandwidth that you're going to need is going to be astronomical. That's why they had so much trouble with the Tyson fight, Tyson Paul. And there was a lot of buffering and a lot of streaming issues. That's why they had a whole bunch of buffering and streaming issues with this last NFL game. That was 28 million, if I remember correctly, at its high point in peak viewership. So that's a lot. I mean, but again, did they have as much trouble as they did with the Tyson fight? No, because the Tyson fight was absolutely insane. I don't even know what the numbers were on that, but I'd say on that NFL game, at least doubled it up, if not tripled it up, that, on those numbers. So the truth is, are we going to be seeing a lot more of those issues? Because if we do, that's going to be a really, really big problem, not only for Netflix, but for WWE, to now put all your eggs in that basket. You don't have anything to fall back on now.
No. Well, no, you don't, because granted, you still have the SmackDown on USA. You do have, so USA is not totally out of the picture, but your main flagship show that you're saying, because you're promoting a huge card for January 6th. And it seems like, and I'm hoping it's not what this is, that you're just taking what you get from that and seeing what goes on instead of having a plan for each week, just in case something does, happen. Because you're expecting a big audience for that first show.
First one, right? That very first one, you're going to see that. Now, everything else after that, I mean, okay, let's look at average Nielsen ratings for the Raw product over the last, let's just say 2 years. What was it at? A 2.8, 2.4, 3.2 on a high side? And that's in your key demo. So if I'm looking at it, I'm going, oh, no, that's totally doable. We can do that. But man, I'm telling you what, first impressions are everything. And if you go in and you screw the pooch on this one, and you've got a lot of buffering issues and you've got a lot of bandwidth problems and everything else, you are going to rue the day that you decided to do this. So you better get it right, and you better get it right the first time.
And that's why we've had the 3 sporting events that we've had leading up to this, because even Netflix wanted to see themselves what that could potentially look like if we chose to go this, if we, choose
that's
going this
that's
route.
the other thing. That's the other thing, man. Netflix has been hurting for the last, I'd say 2-3 years. Okay. You have a Netflix account, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a Netflix account. And I think now it's over $25 per month for me. It's closer to like 27 or 28, I want to say. It's before you know it, it's going to be up to 30. And I remember a point in time whenever I was getting it for $5.99, $6.99 a month. And Netflix was dying because they're trying to get these big movies. They're trying to land big names. They're having to pay out all these big paydays. And they were in the red big time because people were password sharing and they were sharing their accounts and they weren't getting the kickbacks from that. And so because I have multiple linked accounts underneath mine and I do it the right way, I pay for those accounts. That's why I pay so much. But people can't get away with that anymore. And remember when WWE was doing the network, right? When they were doing that, there was a lot of people that were getting the free month and they were dumping it. Like they get the WrestleMania free month, they watch WrestleMania, they dump it. They can't do that anymore. You can't just go in and get a free month and then dump it anymore. And there's even some, and I know there are a lot of these streaming services that are now locking you in for a year. They're already starting to do it. And that's what DirecTV did. That's what Dish Network did. That's what Charter Communications
that's
done.
What cable did. Yeah, cable always did.
Comcast, all of them. All of them. And guess what? This is just a new cable. It's just a new way of doing business. They're going to do the same thing. And they're going to lock everybody in. They're going to get everybody into contracts. They're going to do the same BS that they did before that everybody hated. And that's why they left. That's why I cut the cable of terrestrial telephone and terrestrial standard ISPs, because of the fact of the way they treated me for years.
Hey, and you know without shadow of a doubt, Derek, that when people say cut the cord, you're actually paying just as much as you did.
It's more of a principle thing, right? It's the fact that I'm willing to fall on this sword on principle alone because you screwed me for 2 decades. And so I cannot handle that. I cannot deal with that and I am going to get you back where it hurts the most. I'm going to take my money and I'm going to go to your competitor. And I may pay just as much. I may pay more. I pay more on my ISP now than I ever have before.
And they double backed, and they double back on it. And that's the thing for 2024, folks. I want y'all to understand that when you see these Paramount, Peacocks, Hulu,
Discovery,
Netflix, Discovery, all of these networks, BT, all that stuff, you're thinking that you're getting a deal off of it, doing it a la carte. Get all of them.
You get the bundles, you get a deal. Like you get Disney, right? Like Disney, now you can get ESPN, you can get Disney and Hulu all in one big package now. As to where, like my wife has Disney and she has it underneath her own account and she pays for it. I don't watch really anything Disney anymore. Haven't for a long time. But I look at Discovery, and Discovery's gone and gobbled up so many different television channels and intellectual properties and different things. I'll give you an example. I'm a big car guy. I'm a big car guy. That's what I do on my little side gig. I have been following Motor Trend for years. Hot Rod Magazine. It's all underneath one big company. So Hot Rod Magazine, Motor Trend, Four Wheel and Off Road, yada, 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 all the car stuff. They gobbled all them up too. And guess what they did? They shut the whole thing down. They shut it all down. They fired them all. They laid them all up. And they said, yep, go kick rocks. Because we're not paying you to create that content anymore, because they're looking at how much it costs them to create it and how much they get in syndication. That's all they're looking at. That's it. I want zero cost, but I want all the syndication dollars. And people say, well, you're not pulling any numbers. It's not original content. You're not really doing anything. Nobody's excited about the product. It doesn't matter.
Man, because if that's the case, then you would not be at Pluto. You wouldn't be at Tubi. You wouldn't be at those other, those free digital networks that all they show is reruns.
When you went,
go back and watch.
Right. When you went over to your grandma's house or your aunt's house or wherever it is you went, right? And they had the TV on in the background. I remember growing up with my great grandmother, we'd go over to her house and she would have just, because at the time it was just standard analog television, right? She would have the standard analog television channel on, like the local access, like 24, right? In St. Louis. Mm-hmm. And they'd be playing like The Lone Ranger, or they'd be playing Lost in Space, or they'd be playing old episodes of Star Trek, or they'd be that's all syndication. That's all syndicated stuff. That's all old stuff. They just play on repeat. My folks still do that to this day. My dad watches old Westerns from when he was a kid in the 60s, Gunsmoke or Bonanza or, whatever it is that, they watched when they were kids.
Right.
What do you think people are doing now? They're going to Netflix. They're going to Discovery. They're going to Paramount. They're like, where do I have to go? If I want to watch old episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation, where do I have to go? I have to go to Paramount Plus. It's not CBS, even though CBS owns the broadcasting rights. I have to go to Paramount Plus because who owns CBS? Paramount.
See, and that's the thing. Like when now for sports, when we touch on that, you got to understand, consumer, this is where we're headed. Like you're gonna get, as you can see, the NFL is on Paramount Plus. The NFL is on Peacock when you want to watch it, or Big Ten
NFL's on Prime.
NFL's on Prime, right? So you're going to have to pay for these things, folks, if that's what you want. If you want to see and it's consistently growing, and then the price is just going to keep getting astronomical, especially as more things.
It's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. It's not going to get any better. Folks, you think it's going to get better. It ain't going to get better. It's just going to get higher. It's going to get more expensive. What they'll start doing, okay, I'm going to throw everybody a bone. You want a little Nostradamus prediction for everybody to get ready for this? Okay, get ready for this. what they've already started to do and what's going to happen, take yourself a piece of paper and a pen and write this down. They're going to go to bundles. Everything is going to be bundles. But the way the bundles are going to work is they're going to lock you into long-term contracts. Okay? It's just going to be like it was with cable, terrestrial radio stations, and everything else. They get you into contracts. They're going to lock you into 1 year and 2 year contracts, and they're going to give you either rebates or discounts on those contracts. Then what's going to end up happening is year 2 of that contract, they're going to quadruple your rate or they're going to double your rate. So, yeah, you had an introductory rate for a year at $50 a month. But then come year 2, it jumps to $120. That's what they're going to do. That's what satellite has done. That's what cable has done. And that's what these guys will do. They will all do the same thing. Because let me tell you why. Where do you think all of these cable companies, when they went out of business and started to go out of business, where do you think they went to go to work? They had to go somewhere. They went straight on over to Netflix. They went straight on over to Hulu, Disney Plus, so on and so forth.
And YouTube TV. YouTube TV
and YouTube
is the
TV.
other.
And here's the thing. They're going to have a whole bunch of different options. They're going to have all your favorite stuff split up. Okay, question. Seinfeld from the 80s and 90s, a hit sitcom, Seinfeld. The hit sitcom Friends. Okay. Where were those broadcasts on? What terrestrial television station were they broadcast on?
NBC.
That was NBC, right? Remember that? Okay. Well, where do you got to go to watch them now?
Max.
Why is that?
The production companies that own them. Wasn't it? I thought that's what it was.
Peacock.
Rights deals too.
But Peacock has gone under, hasn't it? Have they officially shuttered now by this point? Or are they still operating?
No, they still operate.
They're still operating.
Case in
so
point,
you can go to Peacock.
WWE still with Peacock.
You can still go to Peacock. Yeah, they just won't air any of that because all of it's going to go to Netflix. All of it. All the PLEs, everything.
2 more years with that. 2 more years with it.
2 more years with Peacock. Underneath that contract with PLEs. So with Netflix, they will have Raw every Monday night, but they will not have any of the PLE access, but Peacock will. For 2 more calendar years. Is that correct?
Correct. So that and a lot of people are heated with that because you have to find everything now. And it's just like what you're saying. Everything's going to wind up being bundled at some point.
Well, and here's the other thing. Jim and I just brought this up. Pays a Google subscription religiously because they hate commercials on YouTube. I despise commercials on the YouTube. I watch a lot of YouTube. YouTube is a big deal around my house. I learn a lot of stuff from the YouTubes, but I hate the commercials on the YouTubes. But I flat refuse to pay their rate, to pay their fee. I remember when it used to be cheap, when you used to be able to pay it. But I mean, amen to all those others who want to pay it. I just refuse to do it. That's the way I feel. And we're going to have to get a lot smarter of how we spend our money on these things because they're just going to eat us all alive, guys. They're going to keep us a slave to the system because they're going to keep us buying these products nonstop. They're going to bleed our wallets dry all the time if we let them.
You better hear us.
Just can't. But here we are at 1 hour, 59 minutes and 39 seconds rolling out. You want to go ahead and roll us on out the door there, A-Train?
Hey, Happy New Year to everybody. I'm doing part 2 of this tomorrow in the new year. So same time, same place. And Derek, thank you so much, man, for jumping in on the show. Happy New Year to you, brother, to you and your family. And from all of us here at Fuel, Happy New Year to you all. And join me tomorrow. We're going to start the new year by continuing with part 2 of the New Year's train right here on Fuel Sports Network. Anything else, Derek?
Nope. That's it. Let's wrap it up.
We're out of here. All right. Happy New Year to you all. Take care.